Okay, let's go around the room. Trustee Levy.
Do you just want me to give my opinion? Is that what you're asking for?
What ideally looking at? Some form of the above?
I like what you have here. I think it's thought out. I think it's a step. It's not going to sock everybody with everything at once. And I am hoping that with Purple Hotel eventually becoming developed, maybe we could scale back toward the top.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. Trustee Patel?
I believe in paying for the things that we want to do.
Okay.
We need to do the things that we need to do.
Thank you. Trustee Sugarman?
It's clear to me that we need to make these improvements, infrastructure improvements. The question is how to pay for it. I think most of your ideas are acceptable to me. However, the issue of the water bills, I heard what Jennifer said, and I agree with Jennifer, and I understand the idea exactly, but people in general don't think that way. And people, if they thought that they're getting some type, and you told them, and the people who ran this village for the last 10 years, for a new group of people have come in, were telling people they were going to get a savings, and then they don't see any savings, and the money's just taken and put somewhere else. It looks like a money grab. People talk about the government all the time. They cut some tax, they find some way to or take the funds that are there, and instead of giving it back, they go and they use it for something else. So I think that we need to restructure the water concept somewhat to allow, at least for even a year or two, for people to see some form of a reduction in their water bills. And then if you want to do it in a year or two, so then you can explain it to them that way.
That's what we're going to, this is not water. This is.
I understand. I'm just talking about, since we're talking about in general.
We're going to come back to
the mayor just wants to talk about this idea. I think in general this is a fine idea.
We're going to come back to you with some water scenarios.
You know, this, I mean, we have to, they kicked us down the road for 10 years. Now we got to confront it. So we have to do what's right for the future of the village.
I'm also surprised when they did the streets in '97, there weren't some water mains.
There were. Again, I just got to comment on that. We didn't kick anything down the road.
Yeah, that was included.
To do the roads earlier than this would be a disservice.
Tim, I don't mean that you should have done them. What I'm saying is you had to know, and we've heard about how, we calculated that there was going to be funds, and we were going to get more money, and then certain money didn't come in, but there was no. What I was going to suggest as one of my ideas is that there should be these workshops more than every 10 years. Maybe every couple of years, it should be these types of discussions to find out, the funds that we thought we were going to have aren't here. But in the meantime, other than pay for go, which you were paying for what you needed to do, there was no money set aside or put away for something you knew was going to have to be confronted 10 years down the road. So now, 10 years later, we have a new mayor, a new administration. We come in and we're confronted with a huge infrastructure repairs that have to be done at a huge $45-50 million. There's no money there at all. There wasn't ever money set aside over the last 10 years. So I'm not saying you should have been doing the roads, but I'm saying there should have been some prior planning other than to suddenly have to confront a huge amount of money that we need to raise. There's nothing out there. That's what
we could have not done the $20 million of capital improvements over the last 10 years. We'd have $20 million sitting today.
I'm not talking.
We could have done easily the $20 million we spent in the last 10 years. We could have not spent any of that. Put it aside.
You could have found additional revenue that you could set aside, just like you want to do it now. You were going to do it one way or the other, but there's planning that needs to be done, and.
So I think
to have a 10-year discussion about it
things like this should be discussed more than once.
Renan, so you're saying that you would have been comfortable adding additional taxes or fees for something you would have paid for them today, knowing that 10 or 15 years from now we're actually putting that money to use?
I would have been very comfortable with there being a meeting every year or two to talk about these types of issues and about monies that we thought were going to come and now we're going to become and things we have to do down the road. Because we're having that meeting today for 10 and 20 years.
Renan, so if we met 9 years ago and discussed this and said, 9 years from now we know we're going to have to do this, what were we going to do 9 years ago then when we discussed it? Were we going to discuss the fact that, so we know in 9 years we need to do this, let's figure out what tax or fees we have to start charging today? Or are we just saying in 9 years we're going to have to come up with something that we're going to have to determine how are we going to generate these funds?
I don't understand your question. It doesn't make any sense. I'm telling you something very simple.
we
These
all
are
plan ahead.
infrastructure and water mains and all these things. We know there's a life and roads have to be changed.
10 years ago, we knew.
10
they
years
needed
ago,
to
you
be
knew you'd have to do it in 10 years.
But to say there was no discussion about infrastructure.
There was discussion, and you had to pay as you go.
No, we've
That's
had
what you said
plenty of
happened.
meetings in the last 10 years where we discussed capital expenditures, we discussed the status of our streets, of our water mains. Don't try to pretend that you've been
fine that
sitting
you
here.
discussed it, but
You can come in this room sitting here
whatever
for
you may
7
have-
months and make any accusation you want. This person was sitting here for the last 2 years and never asked for a meeting. You want to push everything until after the next election? Is that what you're looking to do?
Can I have your
Just say it out loud.
Trustee
Spino's the recognized speaker,
please control yourself.
I'm in control. I'm not lying up here. You guys are. Keep up with your
Okay.
lies.
Okay. Trustee Spino.
Regarding the debt service table here, I have no issue with it.
Okay.
I think it's a good forward-thinking path.
Thank you very much. Who's left? That's it. Okay, so in terms of this model for the infrastructure improvements, my only comment is maybe let's look at spreading them out a little longer or farther apart. And in terms of the water, let's look at a different model for some savings. And this model looks like it is, has potential.
Okay.
Okay? Noted.
All right. We have supplemental slides, but I don't think we need to talk about them unless the board wants.
I think it's good. So are there any?
Do they add something that we would really want to?
Well, it speaks to,
Questions?
I sent it out in the email about, Ron, and I understand your point. I don't necessarily agree with all of it, but we do talk, we talk about infrastructure
We can
all
agree
the
to
time.
disagree.
And I'm glad to have workshops. I'll workshop you to death.
I'm not saying this is a pleasant to be sitting in a workshop, but certainly it's something that
That's right.
shouldn't come up once in 10 years.
But don't you have
It
this every
doesn't.
year?
Stop making the representation that we don't talk about this in 10 years.
don't have this
You didn't magically show up here and then the village starts working. This village managed to survive for 100 years before you showed up.
Trustee Patel, please. calm down.
Don't touch me and don't push against me.
Trustee
This is
Patel,
this is a
please.
threat.
Did
Did you see this?
You're unhinged
What did
at
you
every
just say to
meeting.
me?
You threatened me.
All right,
I'm telling you.
I didn't threaten. I didn't walk up to you. That's a
You
physical
said-
threat.
Trustee Sugarman had the right to
Be very
speak,
careful.
and he's being yelled at. So let's calm
Excuse me?
down.
That was a physical assault right there.
Nothing.
Threatened by Trustee Patel.
There's nothing.
It's on camera. We'll see.
Okay, good. You like adversity. Okay, fine. Can we adjourn?
I think we're
we
going
good?
to have to. But if one more person leaves, and we're good.
Motion to, we don't have a quorum, so-
motion.
Okay,
Second.
thank you, Trustee Spino. Thank you, Trustee Patel. Everyone have a great evening and just calm down.